Hi, welcome to the Author's Room. My name's Alice Clark-Platts and I'm a crime author and novelist and also a teacher of creative writing. In the Author's Room, I invite several of my author friends in to talk about their writing technique, give us some tips on what they do to create fantastic novels, and they will also recommend their favourite reads and also talk about their books that they've written. So subscribe to the channel, ask questions in the comments below and hit like if you like this channel.
Hi, Janice.
Hello Alice, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing? It's a very horrible, miserable day outside.
Yep, it started raining.
It has. But it's so nice to see you, everyone. Janice Hallett, may I present the award-winning British author, best-selling author, screenwriter. I mean, goodness, you've worked for the Cabinet Office, the Home Office. Suspect something spy-like with that, I'm sure. You've written an amazing screenplay for the film Retreat. And then you're obviously the author of the best-selling books, The Appeal and the Twyford Code, which we are going to talk about in a lot of detail later on. But first of all, because you are on the book ship, we have to say, ahara me hearties, welcome aboard.
Shifting timbers.
Shiver me timbers. And you chose this month for us to read Dream of Fair Horses by Patricia Leach, which I've loved reading. But tell us, why did you choose this book?
Why now? Patricia Leach was the author that took me from Enid Blyton to sort of classic literature. So she spanned that gap for me. So I started reading her because she, not much is known about her really, but she wrote pony books from I think the 50s to about the 80s. And her books are a cut above every other pony book you could possibly find. She has a great series of books called Ginny at Finmory, or Finmory, which is fabulous. This one, though, is a standalone. And when I first read it at about the age of 11, 12, it was the first book I'd ever read that didn't have a conventional happy ending. I mean, it's very, very ambivalent ending completely. I mean, would you say it was unhappy? I'm not sure, but it's certainly not conventionally happy. And that has stuck with me all these years. And I think that comes through in what I write. I think I don't have conventionally happy endings either. And this is a stunning book even before the ending, you know, as well.
It is. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it even says in the blurb, you know, that this is a book that, like, they can't believe it hasn't had more attention actually. And probably because of the way it's sort of marketed, you know, it's not going to get literary readers, I think, like running to pick this book up in a bookshop. But it is just stunningly written. I mean, yeah, sure, I guess it is for kids if you like, but I mean, I thought it was beautiful, a beautiful book. Tell us the kind of the story.
The story as I remember it, because you've read it far more recently than me, so do correct me. It's about a young woman who, her dream is to ride in the Horse of the Year show. Before she dies. I mean, I think she's about 14, 15. And circumstances collide to come together, and she does manage to get a ride and a mentor in an elderly local gentleman and a wonderful white horse that she rides. I don't know whether to give Perdita, whose name means either forgotten or lost.
Yeah.
And that's just amazing, isn't it? That's stayed with me. I mean, I did do Latin at school, but I haven't remembered much of it. I do remember that Perdita means forgotten or lost, which is really amazing when you know the story of this particular girl and her horse.
Yeah.
She does eventually get her dream. She comes from a very unconventional family. They're not wealthy. There's a lot of siblings.
Yeah.
Her dad is an author, isn't he? He's
So it's really like, and what it reminded me of was I Capture the Castle, was that sort of beginning, because you've got this kind of like eccentric author dad. By the way, authors aren't always eccentric. I mean, like, can we can we put this one to rest? We don't all live in like ramshackle houses and, like, you know, struggle to kind of get our books out. But in I Capture the Castle, and certainly in this book, That's what these fathers do. And it's it's about that idea of whether you can possess another person, I suppose, and whether you can, or an animal indeed, and whether you can control them, because he is, one might say, a rather inadequate parent, in that he sort of takes these kids around and about and doesn't really kind of like consider them in his own sort of life work. But then that kind of sort of replicates with her relationship with the horse, doesn't it? Because she wants that horse, she wants it to be hers, and she has to learn this lesson.
Yeah, and it's the learning of the lesson that certainly when you think back of it on it as an adult, and when I read it as a sort of a teenager, I was just, and it wasn't really a child and wasn't grown up. It's something, it caught in my throat, that ending, because I could relate to the girl, but also I could relate to the nostalgia that comes across at the end, and the loss.
And the loss, I know, I mean, because I said I was going to read this out. The father gives her a really stern talking to at the end, and he says, you have to let her go. It's the only way, Jill, the only way you can go on yourself. Let it happen to you now, and you'll have learnt something that most people never have the courage to learn. Not to hold on, not to cling, because we can possess nothing but ourselves.
Wow.
And it's like, oh my God.
I mean, that is a pony book that most people would say, oh yeah, that's for like 9 to 12 years up a year. And, it's just about horses. It's about so much more.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. And I mean, if you love a book like I Capture the Castle or National Velvet, or like these books, but if you want something that's also beautifully written and absolutely catches you in the throat, then
work as well, also really, really good. The Ginny Finmore series. Patricia Leach, really Scottish writer, great.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for recommending that. But now I want to get on to this.
Twyford.
I have also absolutely devoured. I mean, I started with your first book, The Appeal, which was, and I can't ever pronounce this word, but it's the epistolary novel.
I've learned how to say that and become confident.
It's basically, which is basically letters and emails and other documents made up the appeal, which was set within this drama amateur Amdram society, which was just I mean, I think I read it in about an hour. I couldn't put it down. And this is your second book, The Twyford Code, which is out now, doing incredibly well, best-selling book. So yeah, tell us what goes on in the Twyford Code.
Twyford Code. Well, Twyford Code is about, it follows the personal journey of a former prisoner called Steve, who, on his release from prison after a long sentence, decides to go straight. And to sort of keep his probation officer happy that he's filling up his time, he decides to sort of launch an investigation into something that happened when he was 14. It's an episode that he's kind of forgotten from his youth, but he knows there's something happened that he should come to terms with. So he goes back to try and find out exactly what that was. So he connects with his old classmates in the remedial English class, and tries to find out what happened to his teacher, Miss Isles. All he remembers is that she confiscated a book from him, became obsessed with it, took them on a school trip and disappeared. That's what he remembers. And so he goes back to his school friends to find out exactly what happened to Miss Isles.
And we find out about this and about this search through these audio files that he's been recording on a phone.
That's right. There's a kind of a twist early on in the Twyford Code, and it's the fact that Steve actually is illiterate. He has only barely learned to read in prison, and he can't write. So to record this investigation, he has to record his voice. He borrows his son's old iPhone 4 and works out how to record his voice. So what we're reading is transcriptions, and they're automatic transcriptions that have been run through some software to print out the words as this software hears them, which isn't always correct. And that's what we're reading, because this iPhone 4 has been found. It's a found footage story.
Yeah, and I mean, as always, I think your humour runs through these books as well. I mean, you know, you did it with the sort of am-dram. There's a definite kind of tone sometimes to what we're reading, and this happens again in the Twyford Code with the sort of the alliteration of certain words. So certain words are as you hear them, but they're written down. So missiles is missiles, as in bombs, you know. And so and mustard is must have, which, you know, it just brings this spark of humor through what is a really gripping mystery. And there's, you know, there's people chasing them, and, you know, it's all very tense, and it's kind of, you know, there's this element of the narrative, like, what do we believe, who do we believe, you know, what's going on there. I just cannot fathom, I mean, as a writer myself of crime novels, and I always think of Agatha Christie, you know, who was heard going around her house the whole time going, plots, plots, bloody plots. No, and I mean, it is a nightmare to plot a crime novel. How you've done it with these two, where, you know, how do you start, Janice? Like, where do you start?
It's a mystery, because I'm now embarking on my fourth novel, because the third one's in the process of being edited, and I don't know how it's done. I'm thinking I've done it 3 times, and I'm still at a loss as to how these went down at the blank page. I don't know, but I certainly don't plot or plan in advance. I set off. I've got a basic premise and basic characters. I kind of let them suggest the plot to me. And eventually, when I get to the end of that first draft, I've kind of got a handle on it. I know what it's about then, and who it's about, and what should happen. And that's when I go back and effectively do my plotting, I suppose. I take things out, I put things in, change things around, and that's when the magic happens.
Yeah.
So
So,
I'm not.
I mean, so you're a subscriber to, I mean, I teach a course called Telling Yourself the Story, which comes from the quote, the first draft of a book is the author telling themselves the story. So is that's kind of how you approach?
That's exactly how to put it. I shall use that in future interviews.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's certainly how I write. So, I mean, I don't sit down with a plan at all. I can't seem to. So that's really interesting that you do the same thing, even with this style of kind of using letters or audio files or.
Yeah, exactly the same. I mean, I think the sort of unique style that I've had so far is of people talking to each other, whether they're writing or Steve talking. I think that comes from my background as a scriptwriter for stage and screen. I've started writing novels quite quickly after writing screenplays, so I think that simply came through in that process. So it feels quite natural to me, and I know it, but it is different for a novel reader.
Yeah, I mean, but also the Twyford Code. I mean, you've mentioned Enid Blyton with Patricia Leach, but I mean, was Enid Blyton, was she a sort of influence on the Twyford Code? Because there is this book that they are investigating.
Yeah, Enid Blyton was a huge influence on the Twyford Code. There is an author, Edith Twyford, in this book, and she is rather like Enid Blyton. She's a writer of the past who's been rather vilified and largely forgotten because of that. And yeah, Enid Blyton was how I came to reading. And my parents didn't read. We didn't have a book in the house, but to help run a scout group, and they do jumble sales. And I'd pick up Enid Blyton books at the jumble. And this was the mid-1970s, early 70s. And a lot of people were getting rid of their Enid Blytons because she'd fallen out of fashion, you know, to say the least. And I just hoovered them up. And I read, you know, most things that she did, certainly most series that she created. I read Famous Five, Secret Seven, The Naughtiest Girl in the School, Mallory St. Clair's, all of those. Faraway Tree.
Yeah.
All sorts. There's loads. I mean, she was so prolific. So yeah, I read those, and they were what got me into reading and ultimately writing.
Yeah.
And so I can't deny her influence in my life.
No, I know the same. And also, when you think about the Secret Seven and the Famous Five, I mean, she was also writing mysteries, wasn't she? I mean, they weren't just, you know, but I mean, like you say about the naughtiest girl in the school and all of that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, sure. But with those particular Famous Five and the Secret Seven, I mean, they were plotted out properly, like mystery books, weren't they?
They were. They were proper, you know, adventures to go on. And she was prolific, but not just in the amount that she wrote, but in the breadth that she wrote. She wrote for all age groups. She wrote fantasy, yeah, as you say, mystery. She wrote somewhat more gritty stuff that was slightly more real. So yeah, she was it's a really amazing achievement what she managed to her output throughout her life.
Yeah, although apparently not very nice lady, but. Who knows? I don't know. I just remember watching, I think, Maureen Lipman playing her once in a drama.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
And so when you start, I know you say that you do this to the first draft, but do you still write chronologically, or are you kind of there's that even kind of mixed up?
I think I like to stay chronological. I know while I'm writing, something I'm always asking myself is what happens next. And I think that creates a flow from one thing to the next when you're cutting between, say, timelines or different characters. So what happens next is always in my mind. And I know that if I do have to put things in, I have to work them in, because this what happens next thing, if that's interrupted by another scene, I have to really do some reworking to fit it in. So chronology is really important to me while I'm writing, definitely.
Yeah. It's hard though, isn't it? Because also you're having to keep all the character arcs kind of coming. I mean, what I really loved about the Twyford Code was you really get that sense, and you get the sense of Steve, and who he is and his background and kind of what's happened. I mean, you do weave that in, the kind of the backstory of how he's got to where he is really well. But you also get this sense of like this guy who's trying to be a different person. You know, he's kind of like gone down, obviously he's been in prison, and he's trying to kind of better himself with the reading and kind of like sorting stuff out in his past. So it's a real achievement to kind of get that going alongside the kind of like tick 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 plot, you know, what's going to happen, people are chasing them, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I mean, well done on that, because I think, yeah, I mean, sorry, go on.
Sorry, the really lovely thing about Steve is that he's discovering reading for the first time. Yeah. And it's not only sort of fueling his newfound empathy for others, he's also sort of discovering these wonderful books that we discovered when we were much, much younger.
Yeah.
Lord of the Flies, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, all these wonderful books that are easy to read for someone who hasn't, you know, read before in their life. But they are great plots, great characters that he's really engaging with. And this is new for him. He's never read before. So it was wonderful for me to write this character that's just discovering reading. And I hope that comes through as the readers discover him as well.
It absolutely does. No, it absolutely does. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk more about it without sort of giving stuff away. So you know, you'd very like me to do that. So I'm going to stop doing that. Then just ask you, what's next? What's coming out of your creative mind next?
Well, book 3 is, I've done the first draft of that, so I know what it's about now. And that will be coming, all being well, January next year. It's called The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels.
Wow.
And it's about 2 journalists who are both chasing the same interviewee. And it's someone who was part of an historical crime that took place 18 years ago. Now, they were a baby at the time, so they're now an adult, and they can now be interviewed as an adult. So these 2 journalists are locked in competition to try and get to this baby that was a baby at the time.
Wow. And is that the Alperton Angel, or do we not?
No.
Oh, we don't know.
This case of the Alperton Angels that the baby was involved in. Because not a lot could be said at the time, because some of the participants were underage. So our journalists, who are now writing true crime books, are investigating what happened back then, as well as what's happening now.
Excellent. And so is this in the same sort of style with letters and documents, or?
Kind of. It's not quite like the appeal, because it's people at work communicating with each other, and how it's presented is a bundle of documents that form the research material for one of the books that the journalist is working on. So, as I used to do when I worked on magazines, at the end of each month, I would package up all of my source material, all the press releases, all the interviews I'd done, everything, all the evidence I might need in future if anyone questioned what was in the magazine, package it all up, store it away. And I'd often think, what if I didn't bother with the magazine? What if I just showed people all this material? How would they,
I see. Yeah.
out? So I thought, well, how about a book that was just the research material and not the actual book? So hopefully that will be an interesting one to unpick as well for reading.
Yeah. Really clever idea. Excellent. Well, can't wait for that. So that's out in January. Hopefully.
All being well. Yeah, fingers crossed.
Brilliant. Something to keep us occupied in these dark, dreary winter months. So looking forward to that. And what do you read when you're what's your favourite style of book?
I like true crime.
Ah.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for true crime. I'll read anything and watch any documentary if it actually happened. And particularly unsolved. There's something about something being unsolved that really draws me to it.
Yes, I know. And feeling like you might be able to solve it.
Yeah, if you only just read that book or watched that documentary, yeah, you could solve it. But yeah.
No, I'm with you on that. Yeah, absolutely addictive, as are your books, Janice. So thank you so much for coming on the book ship. And as you know, we've had lots of comments here saying they love Steve and they'd like to go for a pint with him.
That's lovely.
Yeah, so I do think that the characters in your books really kind of draw people into them, despite the fact that they're kind of tied up in this very convoluted and entertaining plot. So yeah, we'd love your books, so please keep writing them. And do you think they'll ever be made into a film, or anything like that?
Crossed again, fingers are always crossed. I don't know how I can type so much with all my fingers crossed.
Fingers and toes. Excellent. Well, thank you, Janice, and thank you very much for recommending Dream of Fair Horses, which I do really recommend. It's a fantastic book, and your wonderful books too. The Twyford Code, which is out now, and The Appeal is also, you can find it everywhere. So thanks, Janice.
Well, thanks, Alice. Thank you for having me, and thank you for reading.
Oh, yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe and like this channel and check out my other videos with more amazing authors. And if you want to know more about writing your own great novel, check out my course, Telling Yourself the Story, details below in the comments. Thanks for watching.